For the rest of the our first hour, I'm going to talk about a specific aspect of awakening that happened for me. I call it knowledge and conversation. And if whoever's here from the Angelo interview, you probably heard me mention this briefly. Knowledge and conversation. What is that? So in the Bhagavad Gita, the entire Gita itself is a discourse between Arjuna and Krishna. It's a discourse between the mundane aspect of the mind and the super mundane aspect of the mind. It's a conversation between the human self and the transcendent self. And the transcendent self in this case is an actual intelligence that appears and communicates not only the methods and practices of yoga, the different kinds of yogas, but also the fruit of yoga being non-duality. And this is exactly what Krishna, you know, imparts onto Arjuna. One of the main things that's discussed as well in the Gita is this notion of duty and destiny, and this is really unique in comparison to Buddhism, because in the later Buddhist teachings you have teachings about fate and karma and destiny and all of this, but in the early discourses there's really not much on it. It's not much on anything related to your particular unfolding in this incarnation in time. But the Gita really touches on this and addresses it quite beautifully, that everyone has their duty, everyone has their destiny to fulfill. So for me on a retreat last June, this type of inner communion, inner dialogue occurred. And it happened on a retreat practicing TWIM, so tranquil wisdom, insight meditation, and the acharya was Delson Armstrong on that retreat. So on the fourth day, began to enter the cessation of perception and feeling. So to describe that briefly, the mind gets so still, so quiet, and the enlightenment factors become so mature, equanimity, mindfulness, rapture, that it's possible for the experiential field and for consciousness to vanish and reappear. Like, there's an actual moment where the mind is hurling towards its own annihilation, disappears, everything goes offline, comes back online in a second, and it's perceived as a second, but you may have been gone for several minutes. In Delson's case, he could do it for several hours. The important thing, though, is that in the post-cessation, when the mind has disappeared and now the experiential field or mind/consciousness is rebooting, it's turning back on. The faculties of attention, intention, just these normal capacities that consciousness has, like you can put your mind here, you can put your mind there, all of those capacities are not present. They haven't emerged yet. So you have this like possibility to see behind the veil in those post-cessation moments. And in that seeing behind the veil, you're able to perceive the subtle formations that give rise to individual consciousness. And Twim calls this a seeing of dependent origination. You see the cause of suffering, which is craving, but at a very, very deep and fundamental level. It's not a mental image. Yeah, you actually arise as like a very basic, you call it like proto-individual consciousness sort of state. Anyways, so these levels of depth in meditation, they open up extreme levels of purity of consciousness. And as a result of that, certain insights or certain super knowledges are accessible. So, for example, in the Buddhist teachings and many of you spiritual teachings in general, there's this thing about seeing your former existences or seeing your past lives. In the texts, in Buddhist texts, will say he emerges from jhana, or he emerges from cessation, perception, and feeling, and he directs his mind at his former existences. He recalls 500 births, 5,000 births, 50,000 births, 500,000 births, so on and so forth. But the subjective structure of these experiences is not described either in the early discourses or in the commentaries. It just says, okay, that's the attainment. It doesn't actually tell you what happens. Do these 500 lives appear as mental images? Is this just how are these deeper insights actually structured? That's not delineated, that's not explained. So in my case, what happened for me was that after, I don't know, a 10-hour meditation or something like that, the black screen of the mind itself, like you close your eyes right now, your mind's this black screen, right? So imagine that your mind gets so still that the black screen itself morphs into another reality. And you appear in this, you can only describe it as a technological superstructure. There's all these screens, first person point of view on all the screens. And when your attention is directed at one of those screens, you appear in the life of another you, a former, parallel, past, even future self. Doesn't look like you, may not even be the same sex, may not even be human. You're looking through its eyes and you think, holy shit. This is so visceral, so real, that I understand why it's classified as an attainment. It's not like hypnosis thing. You just see these images, and even in some trauma releasing therapies, right? You can contact some trauma from a former incarnation, and this whole scene can open up, and the energetics are so strong, and this emotional purging can happen. But you're still embodied. You're still in the room, and the data, the psychic data, the past life knowledge that appears in those moments is in mental images. But what happens in what I'm describing is you appear as that knowledge. You appear in those lives. You appear in those bodies. Your mind moves out from that body, goes into another screen, boom, into another life. Moves back out into another screen, into another life, like this. Rolodex of lives. And then you open your eyes. One life after the next. Your face is changing from one moment to the next. The body feels like it's another body every split second. So this is an example of the kind of insight knowledges that are possible from deeper states of meditation. So the first question that comes up, is like, what is the utility of that? What is the function of that? What is the purpose? What happens is that once you're in this superstructure, once you're in this level of consciousness that is outside time, it kind of literally a conversation happens. And you could compare it to the discourse, similar to a discourse Like when Krishna appeared to Arjuna and he taught him the phases of yoga, when you have knowledge and conversation, the truth of your life is revealed. You are now outside time and you're looking at what has happened, what is happening, what will happen. Things that have happened in your life that you didn't understand, things that are happening in your life that you don't understand, things that will happen in your life that you otherwise wouldn't understand. All of that is revealed. In a near-death experience, you have a life review. What happens is that as the elements of the physical body dissolve, the clear light of everything descends on the crown at the moment of death. It illuminates all the channels, all the chakras in the body, and those energies then reascend into the brain. And everything that ever happened happens all at once. It's a completely non-local, entangled experience. But it's a flash backwards, right? It's called the life review for a reason. But this knowledge and conversation, this communion with the Lord inside, is different in the sense that there's a flash forward. And at first, when whatever is revealed, you're like, there's just no way this can be true, right? This has to be a hallucination. And then what was shown to you comes to pass. And you realize that what was revealed had immense magnitude. Many of you've sat with me for like 4 years at this point. A lot of you are new. There's only one experience I don't talk about. One. I described like the particulars of it, right? Like past life stuff, I'm telling you about it. But there's parts of this experience that I have never discussed, do not discuss, and will never discuss, ever. That's the nature of this communion. It itself is the covenant. It doesn't get discussed. There are certain things about your particular destiny and your unfolding in time that when they're revealed can't be spoken of. Otherwise, the configurations will change. So that needs to be not talked about. So as a result of this particular opening and contact with the inner master, a series of processes opened up to me. And they didn't all happen in that one moment in time, in that one night on the retreat. But the communion, the communication the door was blasted open. And these experiences began to unfold in out-of-body states and in dreams over the next following months. And then eventually you come to the place where you see that this knowledge and conversation is happening all the time. The mind is like an onion, or we call it the mind, being, whatever we want to call it. It's like an onion. Our physical body, who we are, who we are in time here, is just this outer layer of the onion. And you have these deeper layers. So one of these layers is the dreaming consciousness. Another layer is the astral body. Another layer is the mental body. These subtler levels and planes of consciousness, they're really just layers of the onion that is your mind. Your mind appears as every layer, it appears as every plane. So what happens is the outer layer, your physical body, makes contact with one of the inner layers. The same way that you have all these dreams, you dream every night, but your dreaming self has no idea that you're laying down, sleeping in a bed, in the physical waking reality. It has no idea. If it does, that's a lucid dream. But most of your dreams, there's no sense of knowing that, one, it's a dream, and that two, you're laying down somewhere else. Likewise, our physical incarnation has no idea that it is the appendage of a highly intelligent, non-local intelligence. And I don't mean like the emptiness level, the Buddha nature. I'm not talking like macrocosm nature of mind, Mahamudra stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying like direct intelligence that is formless and that is dreaming your consciousness here, dreaming your incarnations, all of them. So when this deeper layer makes contact with one of the outer layers, we call that contact with God. We call that self-realization. We call that knowledge and conversation. So all that has happened is that the inner layer, the communications come from the inner layers, are finally recognized by the outer layer, and a deepening of that dialogue is now possible. So I'm going to read a particular passage that I wrote about some of the trials that are dealt with in awakening for some people. I mean, everything that I'm talking about, everything that I'm describing, this is very particular to me. I have that shamanistic kind of configuration. And for those of you that have been with me for a while, you all know that I talk openly about these things, these other dimensions, other planes of consciousness, and they're not really discussed by most teachers in non-duality. And I think it's primarily because they don't have the shaman configuration. They're not like experiencing multiple planes of consciousness in sleep or in these other states. So if it's not happening to them, it's just not something that they emphasize. But for a certain percentage of teachers or a certain percentage of practitioners, this is a very, very visceral thing. And it's really a way for it's also a way to see clearly how this bodhisattvic consciousness, or how this higher self guiding intelligence manifests the various incarnations. So in standard spirituality or standard non-duality, there's no sense of this Arjuna Bodhisattva behind the scenes guiding intelligence thing. It's not really talked about, even though it's really clear in the Bhagavad Gita. But for the most part, you don't hear this mentioned. So one of the things that happens, and it doesn't always have to be this mystical or religious type experience. It could just appear as the various challenges and conditions in your life. But there is this thing called the abyss, and some of you are in that. You're going through a dark night, and it's always useful to hear what it was for someone else going through that particular experience, and what they learned, what it opened for them. The abyss has a function. It's not like this accident. It's really not an accident. If you're trapped in this hopelessness, if you're in this free fall, that's part of the whole purification process that is characteristic of awakening. All of this inner turmoil, all of this deep-seated trauma, all of this pain, it gets cleaned out. And that's really what is happening in the abyss. Experience is being structured in such a way that you're being led to complete abandon and surrender. And it makes you resourceful because it's supposed to. Like, your whole life is supposed to get shaken up so that you can listen deeper, so that you can notice deeper, so that you can understand in a way that you normally wouldn't. For some of us, your whole life has to get shaken up in order for you to really look in the mirror, or in order for you to get the lesson, to get the message. You know, some of our schools are pretty thick, mine in particular. So for me, this process of reducing, this process of vanishing, this process of humbling was merciless. Absolutely merciless for me. But for others, you know, bliss and rainbows and cotton candy and Six Flags Magic Mountain. And that is perfectly fine. Fantastic, you know. It all has its own flavor and its own configuration for each person. You'll notice that the themes are very similar, the stages are very similar, but everyone is unique. And the beauty of knowledge and conversation and of beginning to listen to the inner voices, that uniqueness and that life has appeared as you, and you're different from anything and everyone else. Like, yes, you're human, yes, it's all consciousness, but consciousness appearing as you has its specific configuration, specific gifts, specific talents, specific destiny. And that shouldn't be avoided. You know, like, if you're an artist or whatever, if you have a passion for banking, do it. You know, let that be your expression of the divine, your expression of reality. Jesus, I talk way too much. Okay, so this is my journal. So this particular writing is called "Don't Let the Devil Win." So whatever your vices are, whatever your afflictions are, as a spiritual practitioner, as a cultivator, it's really our responsibility to fight those, to purify those vexations, and to purify those afflictions. You know, for an ordinary person, it's permissible to give way to anger, to give way to hatred, permissible to lash out. But a practitioner of Dharma has to restrain themselves, has to answer to a higher calling and a higher order of functioning and of being. So, you know, we tame this rage and we work to really liberate all of our doubt. And, you know, for me in particular, in my life, I was presented with certain challenges. So it's always good to ask ourselves, is life asking me to become more? Are the challenges asking me to expand the size of my container? It's like, I'm going to the ocean, but I got a little cup. So me personally, I don't ask that things be easier. I never ask for things to be easier. I literally asked for the mercilessness of God. And, in that prayer, the wrath of God may come. And these manifestations, the wrathful forms of your nature, in Tibetan Buddhism, they have the peaceful manifestations and the wrathful manifestations. And the wrathful manifestations are also the appearances of the nature of mind. They're also the Buddha nature. When we have fear and pain and doubt, we so much want to just get away from it and shut it off and not experience it. But if you can, from the intensity that you begin to develop from your practice and from your mindfulness, your mind starts to become like this mountain. You start to experience power. And not power from anything outside of you. It's not power that anyone gives you. It's the power that comes from being able to hold your attention, the power that comes from being able to surrender. And you gain the capacity to literally dance on the skulls of your own afflictions, drinking fear, swallowing doubt. And what was previously something that you couldn't handle, something that you couldn't bear, becomes ambrosia. Fear is very intense. It actually really forces you into the present moment, forces your attention into the here and now. So it can be used. All of these afflictions can be things that the consciousness rides as part of the present moment, but because of the resistance, we never make use of them in that way. Don't let the devil win. Drink your fear and overturn every affliction that you can. For me, there's a moment out there in the desert. And by the desert, I mean the periods of your life where you're really left with nothing. You lose everything. When you're out there in the desert, life really puts you on your knees. And it feels like the masters and your lineage and God and the Buddhas, it feels like everything has turned its back on you. And that the night is just not ending. It just doesn't stop. The pain just doesn't stop. In that moment, it's possible for this horrific splendor of reality to appear and manifest itself. In the Bhagavad Gita with Arjuna and Krishna, Krishna revealed to Arjuna his true form. And his true form was like the totality of all of existence. And the Gita says it's an undescribable form. He arises as the entirety of samsara. And in knowledge and conversation, when this happens, whether it's a mystical gnosis experience and it's very visionary, or whether it happens in time in your life, there really is this period of judgment. You think of all the bad things that you did. You think of all the things that you did wrong. You think of all the mistakes, all the parts of yourself that you were able to ignore. You can't ignore them anymore. The things that you turned away from, the things that you ignored, it's all thrown right in your face. It's this perfect mirror, and all you see are all the things that you didn't want to see. All that you feel are all the things that you didn't want to feel. And that's the desert, that's the abyss. So the splendor of reality appears, and there is judgment. And it's not that this this man in the sky shows up and opens up a book and says, this is what you did wrong. It's the life review. You see everything that happened. That's the judgment. You see the past. You remember all the little things that you hid, all the little things that you did when the doors were closed, all the negative intentions, all the anger you sent at other people. In that moment, it all comes back. And it just decks you across the face. So your karmic lot is assessed, right? And for ordinary persons, this happens at death, but for the adepts, for the spiritual practitioners, you're essentially asking for death before death so that you can walk and realize this life everlasting that we call spiritual awakening. In communion, in knowledge and conversation, the true self appears and you see where you were wrong. You're corrected and directed to really live out the higher will. Yeah, the atonement is not this thing to come. It's already here and now. The atonement is the vanishing of ignorance. It's the end of you as a person. It's the end of man and the beginning of life in the spirit. The Bible says flesh cannot inherit the kingdom. And it's because the kingdom is actually outside time and form. And what's very characteristic about knowledge and conversation is that you're told of tests to come. You're shown the suffering that has been appointed for you. And you suffer it. At the behest of the angel, at the behest of the inner Lord, the higher self. So the voice will come in dreams and you'll enter that hidden knowledge, the access to the past, to the present, to the future. Really the mechanics of experience, the mechanics of reality begin to appear. For me, in my TWIM retreat report, I called it the deity matrix. So there are knowledges about spiritual practice, there are knowledges about how things work, are accessible in this. It's possible to see the cause of suffering, and in the Gita, when Arjuna or when Krishna arises as the entirety of samsara, that's also an experience that is possible here. You arise as sin. You arise as everything. And the horror is tremendous from this particular experience. You see really clearly, abundantly clearly, that samsara, this world and existence, is really in the clutches of the beast. Everyone is ruled by craving. Everything is ruled by craving. All of our motivations are rooted in craving, whether that craving or that desire is wholesome or whether it isn't. You see that formation. The Buddha called it the house builder. He said, house builder, I see you craving, I see you. And now the center pole of the raft has been broken. Don't let the devil win. The true princes of the world, they're not men and they're not gods. The demons in our hearts are the real rulers of this earth. The real archons are within yourself, generation after generation their dynasty is forever. It goes unchecked. So it's only really the great philosophers, the sages, the saints that dare even approach them, the defilements. So you're trembling before this darkness. And in order to pass through the abyss, you have to rely on the angel, on the higher self, on the guru, the outer guru or the inner guru, whatever. You rely on that and you gain passage into the heart of the abyss, into this conference of shadows, these lords of pain. And the master to be, the adept to be, is faced with tests, inner and outer, for me, and for the destruction of craving and attachment that is my inevitable destination and fate. I was asked to leave the love of my life. The only person that I was able to call home since my dad passed away when I was 20. And so many nights I doubted whether I could really do it. Some things, they're just not meant for you. Yeah. Some things, that they're just not meant to be. But you try to make them so. And it causes immense suffering. Immense suffering. Part of this whole process was there was a dream. Started as a dream. I was in a dream and I was looking at the phone on the dream and this phone call comes through. Mind you, by the way, disclaimer, you don't have to believe anything that comes out of my mouth. I know I'm almost at the top of the hour, but someone said to me, I don't know what's more disturbing. What it is that you're saying, or the fact that I don't think you're lying. So you don't have to believe a thing that comes out of my mouth. I'm in this dream. Phone call comes through. Pick up the phone. Dreamscape splits into two realities. The mind is experiencing two realities. Imagine experiencing your waking state and your dream state at the same time. So in one reality, I'm in the dream, have no idea that I'm dreaming. In the other reality, I'm these beings sitting around a table, and they tell me in the dream this: if you do not live in accordance with what you/we have decided upon, your life will be full of misery and suffering. If you do live in accordance with what you/we, because at that level it's the same thing, have decided upon, your life will be full of happiness and joy. Suffering is by design to move you back to your original plan. We love you. We're always here for you. Goodbye. Click. Dreamscape merges back into one, into me, into the character with the phone, me with the phone. And then I wake up. In knowledge and conversation, I was shown things to come, what would occur, what would be said, tests and prophecy, knowledge and vision arose in me. And those things have come to pass, even to my dismay and disbelief, because the inner master is truly outside time. What you are, your level of intelligence, or the intelligence that you are, in these deeper layers is outside time as we experience it here. So, with the knowledge and conversation, that day was really the beginning of my death. And when I walked out my ex's door a few months later, that was the completion of it. So, some of you have asked me, like, what the fuck are you, And the awakened person, or the person who's gone through this purification, is already dead. Like, that sense that your life belongs to you is gone. So you're really like this ghost king. And you have this sense that this journey with other people and this journey of helping people is your blessed afterlife that you couldn't possibly have even imagined. It's really the end of personal wanting and the beginning of life in the heart. So for me, I paid my price. I didn't let the devil win. When the call comes, will you answer? When the directive is given, will you follow it? Will you do what is required of you in this incarnation? And will you really embrace your destiny and become everything you were meant to be and more? And will you jump into the abyss? And when you burn in the holy fire and drink this deathless river of awakening? Or will you let the devil win? Don't let the devil win. Don't let him win. Don't let him win. Don't let the devil win. All right, so that was that. I hope that went as well as I thought it would, but I don't know. So I'll pause the recording on this. And then a separate recording. All right. Questions, my friends. Questions. Yep.